Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Today on the Wisdom of, we're joined by Trevor Yager, a visionary entrepreneur whose journey spans nearly 3 decades of innovation, leadership, and impact. He founded TrendyMinds back in 1995 while still in college. Can you believe it? And under his leadership, it's grown from a small startup into a powerhouse. Trusted names like Salesforce, Eli Lilly, Indiana University Health, Cummings, from web development for racing legends like Tony Stewart, and guiding managers in acquisitions with precision. Trevor's never stopped evolving. And now he serves as chairman. He helps shape the strategic vision for TrendyMinds, while also investing in startups, commercial real estate, and new ventures from Florida to Indiana. His work is driven by empathy, innovation, and a commitment to campaigns that genuinely improve lives. He's a values-driven leader, and in a world that's focused on tips, tricks, hacks, and shortcuts, he's a values-driven person seeking much deeper contribution than just superficial, how do we make money out of this? And in fact, one of his comments, one of his lessons for life was to not make it about the money, but make it about the value. So Trevor, welcome. And thank you for giving us this time to do the episode for the Wisdom of.
Thanks, Simon. I look forward to chatting and kind of seeing what evolves in our conversation.
So Trevor, 1995, you're a student and you decide you'll start TrendyMinds. Had you actually even left college? And what triggered that? I mean, that's a bold step. What triggered that? What was the genesis of that?
Well, I think, yeah, you go back to that time period, and I was getting ready to graduate with a degree in psychology and a minor of history and a minor in political science. And back in the 90s, there wasn't a whole lot you could do with that combination, unless you wanted to become a courtroom psychologist or you wanted to become a psychologist in general. And I knew I didn't want to do that. But I liked people and I liked learning, and I was fascinated by just interactions and relationships and how people worked together. And I had an opportunity between my junior and senior year of college to work for a screen printing and embroidery company. And I understood how that worked. I ended up moving from just like selling one line to like actually just selling anything. And I learned that I could do it, and I understood the business model. And I'm like, I think I might try this on my own. And I had a manager at the time that she says, just wait. You can maybe do the university clubs, their stuff, and see how that goes. But don't make this decision yet until you really are certain. And I did a few, and I'm like, I think I can do this, and I don't need to work for you anymore. I actually want to just go out on my own. So luckily, starting out in college, you don't need to make a lot of money because you're a college student, and having a few bucks in your pocket, so to speak, is great. As long as you can get some fast food and cover your small bills, you're good. So I just started it and started working with the university itself with some of the clubs, and then from there, my friends and family started referring me to more, and then it's like I think this is the thing, and I'd still kind of toyed with, do I want to go out and work for somebody? And I had the opportunity to interview for a large law firm in San Francisco called Morrison Forrester. Tried that. I interviewed and I was like, I don't know, this is the right fit. I was offered to be a resident director down for Belmont University down in Nashville. So I was still like not sure that this was my path because I didn't want to be known as a t-shirt guy. And some of my friends were like, "Oh yeah, he's doing t-shirts." I'm like, "Well, that's screen printing embroidery, but that's not like I can do a lot more than that." And I didn't think that was my stopping point. I've always had a big belief of learning, and for me, it was never about just like thinking I've arrived. I always wanted to learn more and do more. And if you go back to the 90s, a lot was changing in the world of design and the
Mm.
world of advertising. And we were like marketing adjacent with promotional products that you started to learn like, well, I need to learn these digital tools now in order to do artwork. And those digital tools were what is now Adobe.
Yeah.
And Adobe was kind of new. So I'm like, well, I can learn this. And I've always had a philosophy that was like instilled in me from my parents, that you can do whatever you want. You just have to work at it and you have to like put the time in. So I started learning design and learned Adobe, and then along a little bit later, the internet was coming out around that time too. And I had a buddy that was in computer science and he went away for spring break. And by the time and he would do like the coding for websites and I was doing like the design, but I couldn't wait on him. So I picked up an HTML book. And by the time he came back, I knew what he knew in terms of coding. So I started building my own sites. And then I was introduced to Tony Stewart through a mutual friend
Yeah.
who was his business manager, and he needed a website. So I came into that and started, doing sites, and then I found myself in NASCAR, working with Joe Gibbs Racing and working with Home Depot and LexisNexis and like all these other different groups that were around, and just kind of kept learning, kept adding services, and the services evolved into full service marketing, advertising, PR agency that it is today. But it started with just that thirst for knowledge and just kind of saying, what I want to do. And by the way, I was not raised with money. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a hairdresser. So going back to that, I was like, I needed to do something in order to get out of that. I didn't want to go
Yeah.
back to a small town in Michigan. I wanted to do more with my life. And what was that? And
Yeah.
this became my thing. And it became, the path for me. It was not one that I ever thought I would be on. And I didn't take a business course in college. So, this was not like the thing. I didn't take marketing. I was in the marketing club, but I didn't take any, courses on that. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of interesting to again, it's that whole learning mentality that you can always learn. It's not just a formal education that gives you that.
Well, I think there's a few chunks in there. One is, maybe the best time to start an entrepreneurial journey is when your commitments and risks are at their lowest.
Hmm.
You're a student, and you need to
True.
be able to put food in your mouth and pay for your room, and that's it. Um, and there is this tremendous pull that I think everybody feels between, I, aren't I meant to work for somebody, and earn a salary as opposed to I'll just back myself in. You kept learning. You said you kept learning, you kept adding services. In reality, what you kept doing was backing yourself in. I could do that. I could build websites. I could run a campaign, etc. And I think, that is one of the hallmarks of entrepreneurs, particularly they back themselves in. I think I could make this happen. I could take an idea and turn it into reality. It's what are some of the big milestones? TrendyMinds was born and then it's grown and now it's acquired other companies. What were the big milestones of the growth of the company over that time? Obviously, it went from just you and then you employed people. Just can
Mhm.
you map out the two to
Sure.
five big milestones as a company grows by the way, from the 90s? Remember back in the 90s?
Mhm.
You realize how
Mhm.
old you are when someone says, remember
Right.
back in the 90s. But what were the big milestones?
Well, I think that the first one was the opportunity to be in NASCAR, and that's the first time that I could start hiring a small team.
Yeah.
I was only in NASCAR for about 4 years, and then I had a glimpse of what it was like working there, seeing technology in the dot-com double bubble in
Yeah.
'99, and I had a team, and then I moved from Anderson, which is where I went to college at Anderson University. I moved from there down to Indianapolis in May of '99. And around 2000, I was no longer in NASCAR. I found myself kind of going back to just me again, from having a small team of like 4 or 5 to just me, and then started working with what is now Indiana University Health. That's here. That started doing some work with them, and then slowly started hiring and building and adding. And then we moved into a storefront in 2006,
Yeah.
got more notoriety in the community. Started meeting more people. One job becomes something else, and then it's Indianapolis is a great city in that it's easy to connect with people and it's easy to see them. And since I live downtown, and my offices are downtown, even now I can pretty much throw a stone and hit most of my clients, whether it's Cummins who's 2 blocks that way, or Lilly that's 3 blocks that way, or Anthem is right here. There's so
Mm.
many that are close that you also see these people at the grocery store, at the the restaurants, all of that. So we started getting the notoriety and building it, and then a big change came in 2010, and I happened to be invited to President Obama's first State of the Union. And with that, and I went because I was a successful business that was growing in a red state. We were growing. We grew through the recession. We were giving back to our community. We were also LGBT owned, so there was a lot of things that they liked for the narrative that they were doing at the time. When I was invited there, I did probably, gosh, 50 interviews in 2 weeks. And was
Mm,
everything from live on MSNBC, in Political a few times. I mean, pretty much all major publications because the White House released my story second to the Fort Hood shooting survivors. So
mm.
it was them, then me. So when that hits, the media was like a frenzy, like, well, what's gonna, what, you know, 'cause you know how the State of the Union are. Everyone wants to guess what the script's gonna be, and they kind of see it based on who the guests are invited. So since I was so early, there was a lot of stories there, and a lot of stories around indie. Shortly after coming back, the bigger corporations took notice too. Lilly invited us in, say, "Hey, we saw you, we've heard of you, we want to get to know you more. What are you doing?" And then they started working with me, and then from there, Anthem came along, and so did others. So it really like that was a big turning point of the company. And then I'd say the other one, we again took that, started growing, adding more clients. Exact Target hired us around 2012, which became Salesforce when they were acquired in 2013 or 2014. We just started adding more and more large enterprise.
Mm.
And we would do good work and really focus on the work, focus on the relationship. And saw with each one that we had more opportunities, and that allowed us to hire more. That allowed us to do more services, buy real estate, do like we have a full production studio here, so we can do everything right in our location. So it was nice to be able to offer that, and with that comes more talent,
Yeah.
more people. And then I think that the next one is when we decided to seek possibly a sale of private equity in 2020, 2021. I had interest from a lot of different groups that I had been meeting with and talking with. And, I moved to Florida during the pandemic and kind of said, I'm in my late 40s. I've done 25 years at the time. I'm kind of getting bored. What's next? And I don't know what I don't know. So I started taking meetings and hired a banker to represent us. And then I found my partners then, and then from there, kind of showed me a new model, which was going from an entrepreneur that was used to getting clients, servicing, kind of focusing on the
Yeah.
work and just doing that to like, oh, there's other ways to do this too, where you can look at acquisitions, and that's a different type of growth. And using financing, we were always again from my background not being raised a lot of money, debt was bad to me.
Yeah.
Debt was something that you don't want. When you get into the world of M&A, you realize that no, there's good debt and there's bad debt, and you need the financing, and you need to figure out how you can do that to actually buy other assets or other businesses and bring those in, and then you start to expand your footprint, you start to expand your services, and it just becomes a little bit of a different
Yeah.
playing field. So
Yeah.
those are probably the big milestone jumps in the
Yeah.
career path.
I think the growth of a company is very attached to who is the face of the company,
Hmm.
even through to big brands like Virgin. Clearly, Richard Branson's the face of the company. Would it have grown
Hmm.
without the personality at the front of the company? And the answer is no. Um, and your growth was opportunistic initially, and as it happens, PR opportunity,
Hmm. Hmm.
presented itself, and then it turned into an enterprise with premises and people. You get to attract more talent, and then you start to attract interest of the VC community, and where real money lives. So
Hmm.
what? I don't know if you did it intuitively or if it was at that point already in your skill set. A lot of people will get PR opportunities put in front of them, and it could be because of a great thing, or it could be because of a tragedy or something like that. Are there two or three kind of rules that you would actually give to people when the unexpected opportunity for some free publicity,
Hmm.
presents itself? Are there any quick soundbite guides that you can give to people to say, when the opportunity shows up, it's not paid advertising, it's not part of your marketing strategy, it just fell in your lap. Um, what would some of those what would that guidance be?
Well, and for us, we've offered PR services since 2008
Yeah.
formally, but we did it before. So it's definitely in our toolkit. And what the way that we approach it and the way that we encourage a lot of clients is that for one, it has to be authentic.
Hmm.
Make it don't make it into something it's not. Make sure that if you're talking about something, you have to be passionate about it. You have to know what it is. Don't don't get over your skis, so to speak, because that's when it can get ugly, and you can mess up a lot. You also have to make sure that it's the right fit. I mean, you could spend a lot of time doing interviews and just out there chatting with everybody, but it may not be a good fit for your business. And it
Mm.
doesn't mean that, there is a saying, all PR, all news is good news, all PR is good PR. I don't know that I like subscribe to that. Because I've seen a lot of bad PR and I've seen a lot of bad things that come out of that too. So I would say that that's the second part. And the third, I think it's when you start seeing what resonates with your audience. I think it's good to continue with that. When you start to see like it's a form, like you compete with entertainment, whether
Mm.
you like it or not. I mean, we all do. The attention of people is limited, and the time that they have to give you their attention is limited. So if you start to find things, whether it's a talk track, whether it's a presentation, whether it's something that you do that's really good, that you have found that that's your skill, that's your superpower, so to speak, um, go with that. Like, don't feel like that's going to ever be wrong, because I feel like if it's authentic and it's true, it's going to be able to last, as long as you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting observation. Businesses and the marketing they do doesn't isn't just competing with their competitors. It's
Mm,
competing with entertainment, it's competing with sport, it's competing
mhm,
with live shows, whatever comes from the outside into a person's field of view, if you like. That's actually a fascinating insight that you're not just marketing against your competitors, you're
mm,
marketing against the latest best movie that's out there and
mhm.
you know whatever the musician of the day is. How have you seen the digital landscape, you know the big marks, like you started in the 90s. That was last century, Trevor. That
Mm.
was so you started in the 90s. We're now 30 years down the track, and you made a comment the internet wasn't really a thing yet.
Mm,
I think it was late 80s that I remember getting a computer with a modem that
mhm,
made the squelching noise, but there was no one to talk to because there's nothing to connect
mhm,
to, right?
mhm.
What are the big movements been in the digital marketing space that you've kind of mapped through the business as you've done this work for your clients?
Well, for one, I kicked myself because in the 90s, 96, 97, I was doing e-commerce.
Right.
And I'm like, why didn't I keep doing that? I should have done more. But I kind of turned from that, was doing other stuff. But I'm like, wow, that was early on. And that's when Amazon actually sold books. I mean,
Yeah.
that was their main thing. But you've seen, I've always had a fear of becoming a dinosaur. So for me, like I don't want to be looked at as the guy that's just out of touch or was using the same tools
Yeah.
that he did 20, 30 years ago. And I think technology also has been something that's enabled me to expand and do a lot more than what I could have ever done by myself when I was a smaller group or a company. And then as we've grown, we take to it. So I think there's always going to be like different iterations of what's happening in the world. I definitely think, and you're right, the late 80s, early 90s, that's I entered college in 92. And I remember we could do like Y Talk and other like little
Yeah.
email with other colleges, and that was about it. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot. But we saw in the late 90s that more internet things came about. And, that's, everyone was like, you need a website, you do this, you do that, it's all online. And then there was some shopping that started in e-commerce, and then it, became next iteration. And now we're into AI and generative AI and a lot of other tools that are just getting smarter and smarter. Um, I don't know where things are going to be in 5 years or 10 years, just in general, because we've seen such fast growth in the last 4 years. That's
Mm.
just like what used to take 5, 10, 15 years is now happening in days. It's like, or months. I mean, it's been incredible to watch. I'm glad that I'm still in the workforce because I think it's fun. I'd love to see like how technology can help us as humans. I think even we do a lot in healthcare and pharma. So the advancements that are happening there, I think, are terrific. I think it's helping us understand more. I mean, if you go back through history, you see like how people used to have to cut open their arm or something to alleviate a fever. I mean, thankfully we don't do that anymore. I mean, and take it from there all the way up to the present day, and some of the ways that robots are performing
Mm.
surgeries, with guidance and other tools that are there. But Yeah, I think the technology is something that it's definitely been in incremental um, steps, but I do think it's now becoming just iterative. So it's a lot more fluid, and you're seeing a lot of faster changes and enhancements to it.
Yeah, fluidity is a great word. It's certainly exponential. I mean, if we think about, from early e-commerce, the internet, long form sales letters and things on the internet were basically what websites were from a marketing standpoint. Then the whole funnel world emerged, opt-ins and lead magnets and things like that. Um, but where we're at now, with AI and what it's able to do and what people are able to create, uh, is mind-boggling. And it's
Mhm,
true. If you're not in the AI world today in some way in your business, you will fall behind at a faster rate than ever previously experienced. You have to be doing something with it, just to keep up, actually. Otherwise, the gap
mhm,
will just become too mind-boggling.
mhm,
It'll become crazy. And I agree. I'm not sure that we really know where it's headed. I've interviewed a
mhm,
number of people, and particularly AI experts. One of the um, people that we interviewed has a view that AI is a new species on the planet, actually.
mhm,
We have to learn to interact with, and it has an
mhm,
awareness of itself. That could be true. So,
mhm.
fluidity is a great word. Things change in a fluid
It-
way.
It's fascinating to me too because I know like over our course and especially being creative as a background for us, we would when we would interview people, we would ask them, are you more of a ideator? Do you love coming up with ideas? Or are you more of a generator or a synthesizer? Do you like to say, here's an idea, but this won't work or this one will work? And there was never a wrong answer, but we knew that if we had an entire group of ideators, that nothing would be moved forward. If we had a bunch of synthesizers, there'd be no new ideas.
Mm,
And it dawned on me as I was reading a friend's blog post who also does a lot of AI consulting and how while adoption seems high, ROI is low. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because there aren't a lot of people that are great at ideating. And I feel like you need to ideate as to what you can do with AI
yeah,
because it can do lots of stuff, but it can also be paralyzing if you don't know how you should be using it or what you can do with it.
yeah,
It's not even about understanding the tools that are out there and what they can do. It's like, how do I apply that? I think it goes back to that whole creative sense. So it'll be for me, it's interesting to see as it evolves who will be able to work with it and harness it. And really become like super powered by what it can do for them, and who will actually find that they need to look for a new line of work because what they do is something that's more black and white, process driven, and it's
yes,
going to be done by these tools that are already out there.
yeah. If I, capture that into a very simple framework, if ideation sits at the top, and synthesis sits in the middle, that still doesn't produce an outcome,
Mhm,
because below that, you need execution.
mhm,
And, some AI agents can do some execution, but there's always a degree of execution that involves humans.
mhm,
And, I was in one of my forums yesterday. One of the people said, one of the things we actually have to get our heads around is what is irreplaceably human.
mhm,
And how do we now make organizations human centered, superpowered by AI? And, I agree with you in that, this ideation thing for truly creatively clever solutions is still requiring, that human ability to see multiple contextual angles. Synthesis, I think, is rapidly, going to AI. But
mhm,
if you want to build a house, eventually,
mhm,
someone's got to put their hands on some timber and things like that at the moment, at least. And certainly we'll get machines to do that one day. But, what is uniquely human inside that? What is irreplaceably human inside that continuum? And I think there's a line, um, let's call it the AI line. And, what technology generally does, you know, the industrial age moved the technology line, And what, as the technology line rises, what it does do is eliminate chunks of work that humans used to do, but it releases the humans to do higher level work if we're willing to move with it. And we've really got to get our heads around this. But you're a very human centered company. You know, values are very important in Trendy Minds. You've acquired you've acquired companies and brought them into the fold. And I'd love to talk about how you assimilate culture. You know, when there's an acquisition of another company, it has its own culture, and you have Trendy Mind has its own. I mean, there's a couple of options. You know, you might have Trendy Minds and the culture of Trendy Minds. You might acquire another company that shares some of the cultural values of Trendy Mind, and then you might buy another company that doesn't really share the cultural values of Trendy Mind, but its technical capabilities are so high, you need to buy it. So the question is, you know, do you try and move these in to the Trendy Mind culture set, or you know, as you acquire company A and company B, do you expand the Trendy Minds culture set to absorb those companies? I mean, I have a view, but I'm really interested in what you've done around culture
Mhm.
as you've you know bought these companies, because culture can make or break in an acquisition. You
Mhm.
could really mess up what you've got, you know, or you could break the other company.
Mhm.
I mean, how have you integrated the cultures? What's been your
Mhm.
methodology? What have you learned as you've done that?
Sure. So for me, I'll back up a little bit and just talk about culture. Culture to me isn't something that can be made, in my opinion. It's not. It's not forced. It's not ping pong tables. It's not beer Thursdays. It's not, it's not any of those things individually. I think it's really down to the respect that you have for each other and the
Yeah,
relationships that you're willing to put together. We always say, like our top value is put relationships first, and that's what we mean. It's everything. It's relations with your coworkers, it's relations with the clients, with partners and vendors. I mean, all of that's important. It's also something that we look at when we always say it's we, not me. We can tell sometimes, like I've always been able to tell some people that I'm like, you may not be right for us because if you feel like you have to tell us what you're doing and how great you are and all this other stuff, then it's like we will know that. We recognize that with people anyway. We let you know, like, hey, great job. We use 15.5. And it does a great job of having high fives, and our values are there, and people are constantly like giving each other the high fives every week, and it's unsolicited. They don't get anything for it. There's no like, do this and get entered for a drawing. It's like that's just what we do. And before that, we had a kudos channel on Slack, and people would use that, and it was great to see. But that is how we operate. So for me, that's culture. And then I think it evolves and grows. Obviously, when you spend time with people, you get to know them more. You get more comfortable with the work. While we have hierarchy, we try not to make it seem like, oh, you can't talk to me because I'm the founder, or you can't talk to the CEO or somebody else. Like, no, we've always had that open door policy because that's how we've grown. We've grown small. We weren't placed in this. And it's important to me because I'm like, we have bosses, they're our clients. I mean, it's like, it's everyone like has that. It's not that anyone's exempt. When we get into looking at acquisitions, we definitely look for one from the ownership group. Do we gel with them?
mm,
And I mean, I talked to a lot of different founders. Just part of it's in our M&A world of just evaluating the companies, or some of it is just even being referrals for my experience of what I went through when I went to seek um, new partners and new investors and what that was like. And it's interesting because some of them I definitely align with, and it's like, oh, it's kind of fun to see that entrepreneurial, like, oh yeah, we're so similar because we do this, this, and this, and we get it when you don't get it a lot with others. Like, not everybody understands your journey. I think people sometimes think, oh, it's easy to work for yourself. I'm going to work for myself because I'm putting in too much time. Like, no, you'll put in even more time when you work for yourself. It's not a easy ride, and it's one that I've always said is a weird faith. Not faith in as far as like God or like that, just a faith that things will work, and you have to have that. If you don't, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur because there are days that will definitely try you and
Yeah.
test what you're doing, and you got to stay on course and stay like going forward. But when we're meeting with these potential M&A, part of it is just to say like, do we get along? Do we seem to have the same sense? Is it all about money? And I've met people that's all about. They just talk about how much they make or the offers they could get and all this. And I'm like, yeah, it's not really us. Or they may have salespeople that are highly motivated by materialistic things. And it's not saying that you can't have those things. It's fine. It's great. I mean, but that shouldn't be your number one. I've always found that if you make money the number one thing, you'll never have it. And I've seen a lot that do that, and it's not saying that you need to throw a blind eye and just kind of do whatever. But if that's your only focus, then yeah, it's probably not going to happen for everybody. It does for some, but not for all. But then I think once you get past that, once you say like, I think you're good people, I think you respect people, you understand that there's room at the table for everybody, and that there's a lot of different thoughts, and there's different diversity, and there's different experiences, which is diverse. You need to have that. It doesn't mean that you necessarily agree with every viewpoint, but you need to at least understand that it's there. That's why we talk a lot about empathy. Empathy is very different than sympathy. A lot of people get the two confused, or where they think that if I empathize, I have to agree. It's like, no, we are quick to say, like, you do not have to agree. You just have to try to understand what the other person is saying, or how they're thinking, or how they're coming across, when they're trying to talk about whatever a topic could be, or whatever opinion they may have. Um, but once we get through that, it that's the leadership. You try to meet some of the team. That doesn't always happen, because in M&A there's always a degree of secrecy
Yeah.
that the small group will know, and you can't tell everybody, because what if the deal doesn't happen, and then people know that you're shopping. I've never had that belief for TrendyMinds. When I started looking, I probably did the opposite, which some people would say was the dumbest thing I could have ever done. But I told the whole company, I'm going to be hiring a banker. I'm going to be seeing what's out there on possible sale. That is, I'm going to sell the whole thing, or I may not. I don't know, but you'll just have to have a little, trust in me that I'm going to do what's right for the entity. And I've never made decisions that were going to be bad. Yes, it's going to benefit me. I was a sole owner, so that's part of it. But I think it's important. Like, you don't want me to not sell, because if I'm hit by a bus, the company is done. You don't want that if you like working, here. So I was very open to let them know, even if I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Not all companies do that. And sometimes once you get past the acquisition, when you can meet people, they're shocked, there's madness, they're upset, or they're sad, they're scared, they don't know. So you have to try to ease those tensions and say, we didn't come in and buy because we were going to destroy you. Like, we like what you're doing. We want to build on top of that. We want to do more. Um, and you just have to make sure that they understand that, and they can start to trust you. We don't expect them to trust us right away, because they haven't had any experiences with us. So that's tougher. To earn that trust, it comes later. But as we look at, like, when you drew the two comparisons, I think it's a little bit of both. Our values are our values, and we've had them, and they've really been pretty similar to the companies that we've acquired. You may use different words, but the meaning is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And for us, our four, we put relationships first. We bring your full self. We know the why behind the what. We like don't just do something, ask why, because we can deliver better if we understand. And then we always think ahead, and we push boundaries, because we can't stay stagnant. And we work in heavily regulated fields that sometimes you have to push to say, like, well, what can we do? Because, again, back to that earlier comment, we're trying to attract attention, and you can't always do it by just doing boring things. So those are our four, like, core values that we operate around. Now, as we do acquisitions, usually they come into what we're doing, and then there are some things that actually aligns. We just called it something different. Like the bring your full self. It could be something that's more around, like, a diversity side, that they were calling it something else, like thoughts matter, or everyone has a thought, or something like that. So we found that it covers most of what we're believing. Now, there are certain things that we've had to learn, and we're a very open company, that we all help each other. And back to that, there's it's we, not me. That also goes into the way that we operate with work. Like, your job description is one thing, but if you have a team member that needs help, you don't just say, well, that's not my job. You need to do that. Um, and it's been interesting because not all firms operate that way. And I think even some when they first come in, even some new hires when they come in, not just acquisitions, they've come from other agencies that the only way to get ahead is if you basically trample the person who's above you.
Mm,
And we've said that's not what we want to do, and that shouldn't happen. Like you should be able to find paths forward in your career without stabbing someone in the back just to get ahead. And it's unfortunate because we do see it. That's happened a lot in the agency world in particular. We've worked really hard to not have that. And when people do come in and they think that's it, we are quick to say we don't do that here. That's not the way that we operate. We support each other. We help each other, and we want to make sure that that you're doing that as well. So it's been more of they do come into like our culture and our values, but our values aren't so rigid and different
yeah.
that they're shocked by it.
So the VC world, obviously, you invest for investment in some cases. So you're not going to. It's a pure investment. You're not going to be running the company. You're not going to bring it into TrendyMind as a part of the business. Um, the kind of overarching umbrella, and then obviously there's investment for acquisition when you do bring the company in, and you've spoken a lot about that upfront. Are we a fit, particularly at leadership level? Yeah, investment for acquisition can lead to some things. Sometimes there's duplication of role. There might be some redundancies involved. Often the duplication is at leadership level, so some of the people are going to exit at the leadership level. Um, would you ever bring a company in because of its technical expertise that you didn't feel like they weren't really the fit that you were talking about, or is that fit so important to you you would actually pause that deal and see if you could find somebody else that had that technical expertise that was a fit?
It depends. Like it's not it's not like every company is like every person. You can say you're designing a company and it's going to be X, Y, and Z, but at the end of the day, it has its own DNA. It has its own stuff, good, bad, or indifferent. So if you're when we do acquisitions, we tend to look for a couple things. One is the client type. Do they have a book of business that we believe that we could grow,
Mm,
that we understand, that we could support and do a lot with? The second part is there a service that they have that we either have and we'd like to have it be deeper, or we don't have and we think it'd be very complementary to what we're offering. So those are the two like top level that we look for first. And because we're seeing deals, I mean, I'll see a couple a week, two to three that I'll just look for. I'm like, no, 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 no. I mean, and it also is like their size. If the EBITDA is too low, that's not really worth it because by the time we do a Q of E and go through all of the steps, we've spent a lot of time and we didn't really need to do that. So there's different ways that we say yes or no, or we want to learn more. Um, it's never really been that if the service is there and we like, I mean, we don't have to be their best friends, but as long as they're nice people, and usually it's like we have seen some businesses that I'm shocked that they're even in business. I'm like, how do you operate? Because you're not the best. But for the most part, people are good, and they're in a service business because they do like to help others. They're servicing others. So we haven't really found that where we would need to pause a deal because we were looking for a better fit. And we do realize that like I've said this before, and sometimes people take offense to it because they think I'm flippant with it. But I said everyone is replaceable. I'm replaceable, and that's what you want in a company. A company that can live and breathe on its own should not be reliant on one person. So as we look at it, like we should know that yeah, in an acquisition we could have 30 people, and maybe only 10 would end up staying in the long run. That's not uncommon. Maybe some would stay even longer or continue to grow into different roles. That doesn't really matter is when you're going in and you're doing it, you want to make sure that what you're buying you can take and grow that, regardless of who's there and who's not.
yeah.
Because we especially now people don't stay. Like we don't. Lily's one of our clients, and they were fascinating because a lot of people that were there, especially 5, 10 years ago, they were career. they started right out of college and their whole career was there. And you just don't see that now. People tend to leave every
Yeah.
2 or 3 years, and they're seeing that more now, just like every company is. So you have to weigh like it's kind of like there's a pitcher for every inning, or that people come in your life for a while, and what they're there, they will leave you with gifts, and they may only be there for a small amount of time. Others may be for a longer period of time. It just depends. But you can't tie an acquisition thinking like, okay, these people will always be here and this is what you're going to get. It's going to keep growing. It's going to keep evolving because it's an evolving entity.
Yeah. And it's interesting, there's a couple of thresholds in the acquisition process that you're going through. And the first one starts with the customer, actually.
Mhm.
What is the compelling and self-evident value created in the marketplace by this company, by our company? Do they have an alignment? Do they have a synchronicity about them? The second threshold, of course, is are we similar? Will we get along? Are we a fit? Do you generally, at some point in your mind, have a view that the founder of the acquired company will exit? There's always the potential for competing founders. Is that generally what happens as you've done the acquisition process?
Mhm. Yeah, in fact, we know it going forward. We ask, like, what is your role? And most of the time they're planning to be done. They don't want to stay on. And that's fine. I mean, usually we'll say like, well, can we at least have 3 months of your time, or can we have, can we call you, whenever, there's a question. And usually they're fine with it because there is a component of an earnout for them at some point, or there's some reason to do it, or they're just nice people, and this is something they've built. They know that, they're going to take chips off the table, but they also want to know that what they started isn't going to be like, driven into the ground. It's going to continue to have a life and continue to evolve. So, one in particular, or actually two in particular, that are they're friends of mine now, and I didn't really know them too well before the acquisitions. And when I'm up in Indy, sometimes I'll see them, or sometimes I'll just call them, or they'll call me even,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. I had one that I bought their company. They went to sell their other company and asked me to help review. So it's kind of like what they were going through. So it's kind of neat to be in that role, that you're like, yeah, we actually became friends through M&A, and that's not always the case. You try. I mean, what we look at is we want to take everybody at face value and realize that hopefully nobody is making any moves from a bad position. They may have moves that, whether it's tax implications or other things that they just weren't aware of. And we just approach it as like, this is what we're being told. This is what we have to do. This is how we get through it. So anytime you're dealing with any negotiations, either during the transaction or after, that's the approach that we take. And we found that most are like that, but it's not all. It's not all, puppies and kittens and rainbows.
Yeah. It starts to lead us into the whole conversation about negotiation tactics and style. And there's kind of two broad angles that you could come at negotiation from. One is win at all cost, and
Hmm.
in a negotiation, there has to be a winner and a loser. And some people negotiate on that basis. And, the other kind of angle on negotiation that you hear a lot of is, negotiate a deal that lets everyone walk away with a win and with dignity. And the debate continues, of course, which of those is the better strategy. But you clearly are in that camp of, do a deal that lets people walk away with dignity, and
Hmm.
the win at their level, whatever that might be. And you might get a relationship
Hmm.
that continues on. And look, most founders want their baby, their business, to succeed and to continue. So, in the sometimes thrust and parry world of M&A and venture capital, um, you, the destruction of the business that you've acquired just to get a certain skill set or a technology or whatever doesn't really have to be the outcome. But it does lead us
Hmm.
into a conversation about relationships and partnerships. You've had clients for a long time, like Eli Lilly, Indiana Health, University of Health, and there are frameworks to partnerships, and whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, are there practices, pragmatic practices, or steps or actions that as a company, you've identified that you take with clients deliberately in order to turn, a first job into repeat business, and then from a repeat business into a long-term partnership where they couldn't conceive of leaving you. What's the pragmatic pathway that you could advise a young kind of emerging entrepreneur on if they want that kind of a client book?
Part of it is don't overthink it. It's not about the latest bell or whistle or the fanciest whatever. It's do what you say you would do. And so many times, the simplest thing, people will screw up, and they think that it has to be, you know, all this fancy stuff, or they won't do what they say they do. They'll promise the moon and they won't deliver anything. You also have to be willing to be open and hear feedback and ask for feedback. And I've always approached a relationship, and I've had clients, some that were not the best clients, and you can tell, like, they're like, why did you hire us if you're second guessing everything that we're doing and we're trying to help, then did you even need us? Like, it's not the right fit. But then a lot of them are great, and they're hiring us because they need help. They want our expertise. They want us to be there. Um, you have to be able to have that open communication, though, where they can critique our team without me getting offended, and we can critique, or I can critique their team without them getting offended. We really need to be in, like, if you imagine that you're in a boat together, you're rowing. If I'm rowing one direction and you're rowing another direction, all we're doing is circles, and it's not going to get us
Mm.
anywhere. And if we don't communicate, and don't talk through it, then we're going to get upset and we're going to leave. I had a client once who did say, like, I've always learned that if we can't talk, the relationship is over. And she's now our chief growth officer, by the way.
Mm.
So, like, we've had clients become part of the team and become good friends, along the way. And I think it's like fundamental basics of humanity that people have missed, that they think business has to be this hard and fast negotiation tactic, or that you have to win and somebody else has to lose. And there are elements that you see that, but it doesn't have to be that hard. It's like you both can win. Now, there's going to be varying degrees of what winning is. It's not always like,
Sure.
you get your 50-50 and that's it. I'm not saying that, but it can be like, we like to approach it all and say, like, what's most important to you, and this is what's most important to us. And it's fun when you're talking to founders, because everybody thinks their baby is beautiful and special and worth a ton of money. And, at the end of the day, I'm always like, well, I hope it is. And if it is, then you deserve the earnout that you think you should get. But if it's not, I've just given you a lot of money and I'm left holding the bag and it's not worth anything. So how do we strike a deal that balances that, so that it's not I take all the risk, you get all the reward, or vice versa? It's let's if it is what it is, then you should be paid for that. And we've had some that like that approach. They're like, yeah, it makes sense. Let's do it. Others are a little more like, they want more cash at closing than what we think we would be willing to do. And we've had to, walk away from deals where we've gotten close. We're like, that's not something we feel comfortable with. And luckily, my partners and I, while we love to dream big and we love to look at things, we're also conservative in some of this too, and say, that's just too risky of a move. We don't want to jeopardize the business that we have for this shiny object that we think could take us even further. But then if it doesn't, it could decimate us.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot, especially, I mean, we're not a big corporation. I mean, we're, just under 100 people. I mean, it's not a massive entity. So you have to be choosy in M&A. You have to be choosy to what you're doing, or you can take the business and tank it super fast.
Yeah. Just under 100 people, though, you are considerably larger than the vast majority of businesses in both Australia and the US.
Mhm.
There are, I can't remember the numbers now, but we're into the 90% of businesses that, have teams that go above, a relatively two-digit, two-figure size, if you
Mhm.
like. You said it's pretty straightforward in terms of building these long-term business relationships. Actually, part of it is get along with people, but do what you promise, do what you say you're going to do. And that's controllable when you're a founder and you are the business, or you're the founder and you are the business, and then you have three or four people working for you. Um, you know, Driving that commitment to delivery when you've got just under 100 people across multiple business units is a different kettle of fish.
Hmm.
Obviously, it hangs off the middle layer of leadership who are kind of bridging the gap. Um, Imagine you're talking to a young founder who is in that early stage. It's them and a few other people, right? And they could be driving a sizable business at that point with the way technology is today, particularly if they're in the tech space. And you know that they're going to come up against these delivery issues and a whole bunch of other issues, many of which we've talked about. You don't you don't decide culture; it emerges. But what are you allowing to emerge? I agree with you on that point. Actually, um, you don't decide it, but you shape the environment that it gets to grow in. Um, Put the customer first. Create compelling self-evident value rather than it's all about the money, and the money will come. Form great relationships. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you've covered, but imagine you're having this conversation with a young founder who you think is pretty great. They are part of the future of the world, and you really want to help them get clear about how they build a company that delivers on its promise as the company grows, as they get 20 and then 50 and then 80, and then more. And whatever other advice you would give them. It's just you and them in a room. No one else is watching, Trevor. I know people. Let's imagine no one else is watching. What's your unfiltered advice you would give to that young founder?
I think there's a couple points. One is you're going to mess up and it's okay. Own it. It's just like PR. If you do something, own it, shut it down, move on, find the solution and go for it. No one is going to, I mean, unless you really intentionally screw up something that you're out to cause harm, most people are pretty forgiving. They're going to get it. Like it's the thing called the human error. It exists for a reason. I mean, and we all make mistakes. Now, if you keep making the same mistake over and over, then there's a problem. Like you're not learning from this. So you've got to be able to be humble enough to say, yeah, we screwed that up. I screwed that up, but this is what I want to do to fix it.
Yeah,
I think so many times people don't because usually it implies if you screwed up, you're going to lose money or you have to pay something for a retribution. And I've screwed up in my early career, and it cost me like thousands. Not 10, but under that as an early startup, it hurt, but it was the right thing to do. And, that became my mantra kind of going forward that I'm not going to argue over the dollars. I've seen agency owners that do that they'll get so mad. Or if they are asked to not compete in an RFP or they lose a book of business, they'll throw a fit and they act like children and they'll have tantrums. And I've always been in for the long haul, saying like, you know what, we may not be like your right fit for right now. And if you're going to part, I want you to part on good ways. That who knows what's going to happen later, or you may go to some other company that needs an agency or needs our services. I want to leave in a good way. Now, it's you don't with everybody. There are things that happen. It's just human nature. There are some times where I've always said if you're going to, I don't recommend burning a bridge. But if you're going to, make sure you torch it so that you're good and you're ready to move on, because there will be those that you just have to decipher. The other piece is, and it's kind of along the same lines, not everybody's going to be there to help you, and not everybody is going to be like altruistic in what they say for you. And you've got to learn that fast because I've had so many people especially my early career, that would try hey, if you do well, and by the way, I have this for you. I want to spend a lot, but if you do well, I've got a lot more waiting. Like those are
yeah,
usually that I say, you run, you don't walk, you run from them because it's rare that that's the case. They're usually looking to get something on the cheap and have you do a bunch of work that's not going to lead to anywhere. So yeah, you start to see early indicators of what people are. And I've been fortunate that, I've led with intuition. I've always done that. I've had people tell me I shouldn't, and I'm like, no, whenever I don't listen to myself and my instincts, and I know I should, I regret it later. So that's almost deep in my resolve and to do that exact same thing. So I feel fortunate that I do have that. And I listen to it because it's helped guide me around people. And I don't know if that's just from the way I was raised or my psych background and in college that I learned, some things, but there are things that you just start to see and you see patterns and you're like, yeah, that's probably not a good fit for me. So it's okay to say no to business. And a lot of times founders they don't feel like they can or they can afford that. But there are times that you're going to go through more bumps and bruises. And then it's not worth it. I mean, you'll learn. So there could be some good nuggets that come out of some of those. But those are probably the biggest things that I would tell. And I do tell some people that are younger that are starting because there's a lot that I've learned, over the 30 years that it's there's no book either that tells you, no matter what you read, there's no book that's going to completely define everything that you're going to go through as an entrepreneur.
No, because it's life. It's lived experience. It's
Hmm.
interesting what you're saying. Contra deals seldom work out, and the idea of yeah, if you were to do this for me for free to help me build this, we could give you equity in that, and
Hmm.
all sorts of variations on this, the whole sweat equity thing. Generally speaking, those people are just shifting all their risk to you.
Hmm.
And in the world, shifting risk is is as compelling an argument as actually making revenue, for a lot of people. And there's a lot of business in the world today that is predicated on shifting risk. The contracting world is full of that. The construction world is full of that. Where can we shift the risk to the lowest common level? And generally, that level is the one that can't afford to pay for the risk, if it happens. So there is a real caution there. I love that cautionary component. When people are saying, "Hey, this is going to be great. You do this for me at
Hmm.
a lower rate or even for free, and this is going to turn into something massive." You're betting on that individual.
Hmm.
They're shifting the risk for your component to you, and then you're betting on their ability to actually make it happen. And it is so true. It so often doesn't actually pan out the way you would want. I've had the same experiences over and over again. And I would say very often people say, well, we love what you do. We it's not in our budget. We can't afford it. But we've got an amazing network. And if you were to do that for us, we could introduce you to that network. Never works out.
Hmm.
It just doesn't. I'd love to wrap up with kind of three fast questions, fast answers, so people can know you a little more,
Sure.
if you're game. And
Sure.
okay, so if you could relive one moment of pure happiness from any period of your life or any moment of your life, one moment of pure happiness, what would that be, and why would you pick that one?
Rapid. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a big question, right?
Oh yeah, that's not a little one. That's not like what's your favorite color.
Well, I do
You
have what's your
know,
favorite color, but
that's
that doesn't feel serious enough.
right. If I could go back, I would say the most remarkable time that I had was when I was invited to the State of the Union and was with President Obama and Michelle. It was surreal, and because it was so surreal, I didn't really fully take it in.
Hmm.
And I had some drama happening behind the scenes as well, so I was kind of distracted too, and there was a lot of pressure on me, just like you're thrust into the spotlight, and it's different. And I think if I could go back in that, as far as for the business side of me, I would like to just go back and sit with it and just be like, oh, this is cool, and really enjoy it. I mean, and not be, kind of just all hyped up. I mean, it's the nerves are there and everything else that go on. I think that's part of it. So to me, that would be like my big, business moment that I'd love to go back and just
That's
live in.
It's a very common thing when I ask that question. People can identify a moment, but they say a similar thing. But I really only realized how significant it was after. It's the whole smell the roses thing, right?
Yeah.
Easy to say, way harder to do.
Hmm.
Do you have a personal philosophy that guides so much of what you do? Something you hear yourself saying over and over in your head?
Trust yourself, trust your instinct.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, that's your main thing. I mean, you have a lot of great people around you that will support you and help you. That's not taking it away from them. But if you're an entrepreneur, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be able to be comfortable with that and say, what should I do, and be able to make the decision to do it. So you got to trust, why you're even on this journey.
Yeah. Perfect. And if you could have invented anything in the world that already exists, what would you love to have had your name on it because of what it is?
I mean, not to take away from Al Gore, but I think the internet would be huge. Just as we're communicating on this, it was, without it, I mean, we were different. And I mean, the first time I traveled abroad, I was 15, and it was before the internet. I mean, barely, but it was before it, and it was different. I mean, even traveling before a cell phone, that the way
Oh,
they work now with the smartphones, I mean, very different, but it's still all like, I feel like the internet was the basis that really helped us kind of reach another level of where we are, today.
yeah. There was a wonderful um, full page ad in the local paper here in Australia when the Queen Mother died at 101 or however old she was. And
Hmm.
the headline said, from the telegram to the internet. And that's a great headline to bookend a life, because the first time I traveled, the internet didn't exist. I was 18, traveling independently. And when I needed more money, I had to send a telegram home to get my
Hmm.
parents to wire some more money. And that whole thing
Hmm.
was about 5 days in process just to get
Hmm.
it to happen, right? It was a wildly different world. The internet absolutely was game changing.
Hmm.
Trevor, thank you so much for your time, for sharing the story. Um, you know, you know, a young man still in college decides to start a business and lands in 2025, investing in other companies, acquiring other companies, having grown a great business in their own right, serving a marketplace, attending a State of the Union address with the president, and living a full life, but also driving values-driven businesses, and really recognizing the importance of the human condition, if you like, and relationships. So, thank you for everything you've shared with us. I really, really appreciate your time and contribution. And dealing with behind the scenes what people won't be aware of, some technical glitches that we that had to stop us in the middle. So your patience as well. Thanks very much, Trevor.
Thank you. It was great spending time with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.